Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Can we get serious now?
One thing that did happen during the 60s was some music of an unusual or experimental nature did get recorded and did get released. Now look at who the executives were in those companies at those times. Not hip young guys. These were cigar-chomping old guys who looked at the product that came and said, I don't know. Who knows what it is? Record it, stick it out. If it sells, all right. We were better off with those guys than we are now with the supposedly hip young executives who are making the decisions of what people should see and hear in the marketplace.
Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the business side of music.
On the show with us today, Emmy Award-winning media advisor, talent brand strategist, creative coach, and host and curator of his own podcast titled I Have a Podcast is joining us today, is Vinnie Podestivo. Welcome to the show.
Yo, I'm a pretty literal person, huh? I couldn't think of anything more creative than that. I used up we'll talk about where I've used up my creativeness, but I think I used it all up. So for when it came time to call my own podcast, I just want people to find it. I want you to know what I got. I got
simple.
a podcast.
I like it.
It is what it is.
Yeah, it's very simple. Your career is quite profound, maybe, stellar, legendary. Let's choose the right word because, I mean,
thanks.
You've done it all, my friend.
Oh, this is the business side of music. So I'm prepared to defend what I did at MTV in the late 90s, early 2000s. I got to say I'm prepared. But that being said, I appreciate you saying that. And as someone who comes from music, yourself and someone who came to music through television, and I got to meet the music industry through like the video reps and the label reps first and the artists sort of second. And man, which is what an awesome group of people this music community is. And I'm so glad I got to touch it when I did at MTV the way I did, because it changed me forever. And I had no clue the power of music, the unspoken power of music. And then you do that with video and a little bit of storytelling. Oh, God, it's the best recipe ever.
Let's back up a moment, and I want to talk about MTV because that was a pretty substantial part of your career. How did you get started there? Because you wore many hats while you were at MTV, from what I understand.
Yeah, I mean, I started as a casting associate. They would call me if they were looking for audience, like large audiences, and ultimately, I cast something for them called Choose or Lose, which is the MTV's coverage of the presidential campaign. And prior to that phone call from MTV, I'd worked on a show on Fox News called Hannity and Combs, where I got to travel the country and sort of learn questions from both sides of the aisles and then pick questions that I thought would resonate in the room that day and in the show, that month or that week. And I had all these sort of different paths that I sort of could have gone in. But in 1999, MTV called and said, we're creating a talent development department. And we want you, my boss, this man named Rod Asa, who's currently still the head of unscripted programming at NBC, is the person who said, I want to launch this department with you. And the two of us created a talent development department. I am a data engineer first and foremost. So I know spreadsheets and databases, and like I'm a tech creative first. So I knew how to, get PowerPoints and Excels and spreadsheets looking the way that the creative energy in the room felt. I knew how to translate that into documentation. So luckily I had that skill set. I understood how to, I want to point out, I went to school. I graduated in 99. So I learned media 95 to 2000, the 5 most pivotal years in music. If you talk about recording structure, sharing structure, selling structure, distribution structure. I mean, we went from tape to digital, back to tape to HD, back to HD tape, and then eventually, and then we changed formats, and TV video sort of was getting tousled around then too. So to learn how to move data files, how to convert them to files so that I can share them and move them and edit them was like a big part of my success. Just understanding the structure of a creative document, of a creative file. So I have a really interesting, I wasn't supposed to be, I mean, obviously I was supposed to be at MTV when I was there. I was there from 98 to 2007. Our department created Osbournes and Newlyweds and Punk'd, and those are shows that I got to work on very closely. While that, I was casting TRL and The Challenge and Wild 'N Out on MTV and just exploring ways that artists can represent themselves. I love talking about Jessica Simpson because we'd been talking about a way to work with her on a network for a while prior to the framework of Newlyweds. When Newlyweds framework came into existence, when that became her reality, it suddenly became like the bookends to a great narrative. And it was just so cool to get to work with artists. And I didn't know it was I didn't know that was brand building. I didn't know that was brand development. I didn't, and I don't know if the powers that be knew it and they didn't want to put the pressure on us. So they didn't we just, who we worked with was important. How we executed was important. All that was brand development. What we did off camera is just as important as what we did on camera. That's brand development. And I got to see it with the biggest of the bigs, Beyonce. I put Beyonce in her first film and a Carmen, a hip opera, to like brand new art. Mandy Moore. I got to literally launch artists that have, not left the pop culture lexicon. And it's just the coolest thing to see happen and to understand the many small choices that people make to have the big impact that it takes to be in this industry.
When you look at brand development, and in fact, going back a step or two, when you talk about the late 90s and early 2000s, the format of how music was being delivered, and people that listen to the show have heard this story before, but from my record label background, we went cassette to CD, kicking and dragging and screaming into MP3s, downloads. It's not going to last. It's just a fad. It's going to go away. And
in fact, you guys said we'd rather make stickers than MP3s, and you literally tripled down on stickers and artwork.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Let's expand our creative art department, Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Anything we're comfortable with.
And I'd say caught all of us off guard when we finally realized how big that transition was. And suddenly might be a bit of an exaggeration, but it didn't happen overnight, but it seemed like it did, that we transitioned from CDs to downloads. It especially played a vital part in the retail store complex. Brand developing, when you're branding an artist, did that transition seem to transcend what you were doing when you had someone, like a Mandy Moore, or you had a Jessica Simpson or the Osbournes? Did that change the game plan? I mean, did you have to pivot like midfield and figure out we got to go in a new direction, or did it all seem to just sync up really well?
Yeah, sure. It all was perfect. Everyone understood what we were talking about, by the way.
Yeah.
I'll never forget my boss. He pitched the Osbournes and they kind of shrugged their heads. And we ended up getting Jack and Kelly to host an episode of Cribs. And that was our way of showing the MTV execs what Osbourne could potentially look like. Ozzy sitting down in the kitchen watching, at that point, the name of the show is Two Fat Ladies in England, a huge cooking show. I'm Sharon in the kitchen. I don't know about you. I come from a big family. A lot of action happens in the kitchen. So the kitchen show was actually probably supposed to be a cooking show, I think, or something to do with only in the kitchen. But with Ozzy, you had to go where he went. And eventually we built in cameras and we changed the game. I think we created it in a lot of ways. There was a trifecta that happened at MTV. There was the Osbournes, and then I think Newlyweds. No, I think Punk'd was the second, and then Newlyweds, or Newlyweds and then Punk'd. But it's those three shows all coming out in the same, 12-month span that really changed how people could tell a narrative. That was the second year that non-scripted programming can win an Emmy. I think RJ Cutler won the first Emmy in unscripted programming, and cable was maybe about, I don't know, 20, 40 cable stations back then. I think that was MTV and MTV2. I hadn't launched MTVU or MTV3 or MTV.com or any of the other sort of infinity channels that we got to launch there. But working with artists from the MTV platform allowed me to be cognizant of who our advertisers are, because that's who pays the bills. So I'm aware of Axe body spray audience. I'm aware of Dove audience. I'm thinking of like all the major advertisers and who buys their products and the lifestyles that those people have. And I'm trying to meet them in their paths, in their journey. You know, it's like a weird way to sort of talk about how I did what I did. But like, I was at MTV. You know what MTV gave artists that no one else would give artists? Time. 30 minutes a show. Plus, if it did really well, they'd re-air the heck out of it and get that, make that money in re-airs. Like 40, 50 times in the re-air. But that's what it was. That's really, if you ask me, the genius thing that MTV did that no one else was doing is they gave Ashton 30 minutes. They gave Jessica 30 minutes a week. They gave the Osbournes 30 minutes a week. Ashley Simpson 30 minutes a week. Carmen and Dave 30 minutes. I can go down the list. We just created space as a network. You know, we had space to be able to hold these stories. The internet did a great job at creating more space. So not only was it famous stories, you know, the people who were walking through our doors, but eventually the audience that was watching us, eventually the camera surpassed the talent and focused in on the audience. And like, that's where social media really, you know, changed the game in terms of storytelling. But the distribution piece is funny. The power in TV, man, you miss it. And now I know why every generation before us thinks they had it. You know, they had it right. You know, so much less noise, so much more uniformity, so many more people understanding what's even on television. Or like, we know Coachella just happened, but we don't know, did it just happen? Was it this week, next week? What is it? Where, you know?
Yeah.
You might not have watched MTV, but you know when the VMAs were, you know, in the 90s, you know what that pop culture moment was. But things happened around those tentpole moments. Bands would reunite around the VMAs. Bands would launch singles or collaborations around the VMAs or around at 3:30 after school on TRL. You know, I remember when NSYNC talked about, you know, taking a break, and they did it right at 3:30. It's when that news release went out. Social media, you know, got rid of the need for the gatekeepers at TV networks to be the sole people who decide, you know, what pop culture gets seen. And I look at Love at AOL, or just music at AOL, love it. Like what AOL was doing where we wanted it, you know, in a schedule, and AOL was giving it on demand. Now you understand how, you know, people want their music. They want it right away. It used to be they wanted it to experience it with people, but now they want to own it so that they can experience it with people and play it. You know, it's so different the game is now. And I hope we get to talk about ownership, because that's what blows my mind about the huge amount of respect I now understand and have for artists who for years have been putting out content like we do on social media that no one asked for. You just hope everyone likes it. You hope it's really good and relevant. You know, that's called an album if you're an artist, not a post if you're like me and you know, and to have the fortitude, the initiative to be creative. I have so much more respect for them now after getting no likes on a reel or dismal performance on something that I thought was going to be like, you know, my viral moment. I just have so much respect for those players that have been creating content, to be honest, that they don't even own. The game is completely different on that music side, as you know, and these artist contracts are getting more favorable. The more we talk about it, the more favorable they get. But the ownership of what's happening now, that's really exciting. That's even part of the conversation.
On the show with us today, Vinnie Podestivo.
Hey friends, this is Dan Schaefer. Check out the episode that I was in with the great Bob Bender, The Business Side of Music.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
Hi everyone, I'm Larry Butler, and I want to send you a free digital copy of my new book, The Singer-Songwriter Rulebook, 101 Ways to Help You Improve Your Chances of Success. That's right. Everything you need to know to launch your career as a singer-songwriter, all based on my 40 years in the live performance arena, and believe me, I've seen it all. In my book, you'll find the 10 things you have to deal with before even thinking about becoming a singer-songwriter performer. You'll also learn about the 5 things every singer-songwriter can do this weekend to make their live show better. 5 things I can guarantee that you are not doing already. Plus, there's tips on songwriting and staging, photo and video shoots, publishing, merch, dozens of other topics, all written for people who don't particularly like to read. And again, it's free. Just go to the Business Side of Music website homepage and look for my book cover. Click on it, and a free digital copy of my book will be yours. I'm Larry Butler, and I approve of this message.
Whether you consider yourself a musician or not, music is all around us, and it affects our everyday lives. Whether it's background music influencing our shopping habits in a store, organ music adding the vibe to a baseball game, or a playlist convincing us to keep going on that last mile of a run. I'm Mindy Peterson, host of the podcast Enhance Life with Music, where we take a holistic look at music's benefits through the lens of science and medicine, entertainment, and business. You can find me and Enhance Life with Music at mpetersonmusic.com/podcast or wherever you get your audio.
You're listening to the Business Side of Music.
Let's talk about ownership for a little bit here, because that's a path, obviously, we've started down. One of the things that for years and years and years was you had to have a record deal. You had to have something in place with a record company. Why? Because they had the promotions and the marketing and the sales teams in place, and you really needed them to get exposure. Well, we've already touched on the retail end of things a little bit. You walk into a Walmart or a Target or a Best Buy anymore, and there really is no CD department per se. It's making a little bit of a comeback, especially in vinyl, but nothing like it used to be, just row upon row of product, like Tower Records used to have, or Warehouse.
Yeah.
It's a whole new world.
The Virgin Mega Store. Oh, I love walking into that store.
Exactly. Now we're in a position to where, especially the independent artists, and you've named some names, someone such as a Mandy Moore or a Beyonce, they rule the world. But the independent artist, the average person out there that's just trying to make a career of themselves, as you said, they post something, they hope that it gets enough likes, enough followers, enough streams, but that ownership is so important to the person that creates that content.
I mean, just think about how music is used on TikTok and on Instagram now, that if you own it, you can upload it and allow other people to create, music in your likeness, with your energy, with, create it with your tools, your paintbrushes. And that's just the tiniest of ways that you have full control over what you can support a cause unanimously and overnight. And also, if something happens that you decide you need to change your mind, you also have this tremendous flexibility now with regards to the ownership of it. And then look, there have probably been, I would say, a considerable amount more creatives, probably a lot more musicians now than they're used to. But here's the question for you. I don't know the answer to this one, Bob, but are there more music platforms or more music artists these days? I don't know the answer, but that might be a good sign that I don't know the answer. It's a great race, and they both need each other. So the cool thing about being an artist, for example, okay, I don't know how this, I haven't said this out loud yet, but if you're seeking verification on Instagram, being a musician will get you verification quicker on Instagram than being a public speaker. Instagram is doubling down on the music space. Instagram is looking for music creators to come to the platform. Instagram is literally making it 10 times easier for musicians to get verified on Instagram in America than, well, certainly politicians, but business owners or traditional creators or public figures, I was going to say. And I think that's a real sign for what's to come.
Instagram is a platform that creates content opportunities, to help build your audiences. But at the same time, it's another piece of technology out there that is transitioning. It isn't now what it started out to be. And it's something totally different. How do we keep up with that as creative people? How do we know what the next step is? We don't want to go down that avenue that called MySpace and, buy all that stock and yeah, this is going to be it. And then, Facebook comes along and that takes out MySpace. Is there a platform out there that you see that maybe hasn't been created yet or hasn't developed yet? Or do you think it's the Instagrams and the TikToks of the world that are really starting to transition?
Yeah. And I want to point out, like, I'm a Friendster MySpace guy. So like, we didn't even talk about those poor chats that don't even make this conversation. And my number one profile platform, my platform of choice is actually LinkedIn as a creative, because I stand out on LinkedIn like a big sore thumb. I stand out. Everyone's marketing, everyone's advertising, and I'm like, I'm creative. I've created marketing, I've created advertising, I've created creative. I'm kind of learning to be a marketer. I'm kind of learning to be in advertising now as a creative, but that really helps me stand out on LinkedIn. And then I'll say this: every single platform that has launched, MySpace. To be honest, I think it was like MySpace. It was Tila Tequila. I know, because that's part of the reason why I left MTV back in 2007 is I didn't want to work on that show. So I was like, how does the number one MySpace artist not even have a single? How does that, Tommy Mottola? How does that even happen? I don't want to be a part of fake music industry. I'm already like reality TV. It's already got a bad enough rap.
Yeah.
Even though I reinvented how artists could tell their story, even though how I created space for humanity in this world of celebrity. I'm not, I wish I could have done something with Britney, because the writing's on the wall with her and her team, and I never got close enough with her to have the impact that I did with Ashley Simpson or Jess Simpson or Kelly Osbourne or Mandy. But I just wish, I always wondered if I was part of her team, if she would have known a little bit more. I'm very transparent. Jessica, Mandy, Ashley, they ask questions. I give full answers. I want you to know what the outcome is what the expectations are going to be, so that you can laugh at us and exceed them. By the way, Chicken of the Sea, we couldn't have made that up. That was like no millions of dollars could have written that up. That's just pure life experience. It's just cool to see how hard it was for them to launch. With Ashley, we knew Ashley. First and foremost, Ashley's a really strong songwriter. So I hope the people listening to this, agree with me. Jessica has some big hits, but Ashley has more number one hits than Jessica does. And I've heard a lot of people talk about this. I'm kind of repeating what I've heard from some of the great music people that I've heard talk about her. But I've always respected Ashley as an artist. She had a verbal agreement from the label that there was going to be a deal. The show helped that verbal agreement become a written agreement that we can then document and change and turn. And we knew that the label was going to support her, but it doesn't matter how much the label supported her. We're MTV. We still knew that, like, if the label even drops her, we would still be carrying the brunt of introducing this new artist to mainstream media the way that it was. If I can go back in time, there are a couple of things that I do different. A couple of decisions. I had this conversation with Joe Simpson over the pandemic on Clubhouse. We let the kids have too many conversations, make too many important decisions, too many choices without having experience. And one of those was her musician who was playing drums with her on the night that she was on Saturday Night Live.
Right.
And he had the button, he had the pedal to kickstart the song, and the wrong song was cued. So the wrong song played, and they didn't know how to get out of it. They'd never been in a situation they can be out of it. And I get hard on myself sometimes. And I actually knew cable TV. I actually really take this on. I taught her how to host TRL, how to host shows live, that were pre-taped, so we could stop production and go back and make them great. Or if they were live, you had someone like Carson Daly who was there to cover for you, And she had a whirlwind of an introduction into being a celebrity. So I look back at some of those decisions that they let her make out of comfort, because they didn't want her to get aggravated, but didn't protect her from getting hurt. And so you learn some of those things. And we talk about that. And I make sure people know those stories, because I don't want that ever to happen again. Because then MTV made me go out and find the next Ashley Simpson. And this is my deciding factor to leave the network, because I found this wonderful woman who was going to be a huge recording star. She was a Baptist recording singer turned pop star who hadn't even written her first track. That just sounds like perfect harmony to me, by the way. That artist was Katy Perry. And MTV was like, no, she ain't it. I was like, okay. And then they made me recast. I had to cast All Things Rock. I had Benji and Joel from Good Charlotte on the show. And I recast it, and I submitted my final tape with a strong recommendation for Pete Wentz. And they said, he's not even the singer of the band. Then he's like the like, what do you, maybe you've lost, your touch on like who we think are the stars. We're going to go with Tila Tequila and Jersey Shore. And I was like, okay, that's different. That's a different direction that I was going to go in. How about you do that? I'm going to go cast Housewives. And I hopped over to Bravo and A&E and I took what I learned creating celebrity brands and I adapted that to very regular people who were in very regular circumstances, just very different walks of life. Some of them were Housewives of New Jersey, by the way. That is my show. But there are other shows that I got to cast that have nothing to do with Bravo, where I got to make giant stars out of normal, regular people. And all that is, by the way, star building is audience building. It's not star building even. It's weird. It's weird you give the star, the person, all that credit. When to be honest, it's the audience that gets every single ounce of credit. Michael Bublé is a genius singer, but what he did the best was that Christmas special. Because my mom swears that she invented Michael Bublé, on his Christmas special. And she's the one who told the rest of her friends. But it's that ownership, it's that ownership of discovering somebody, of sharing something. And again, I'll take it all the way back to what we said earlier about owning. So if you own your music and people are discovering you and sharing you, you're so much more agile and able to turn that song into a theme song, into trends on social media, to be applying, to all the different places to stand out. Where maybe it's hard for musicians to stand out in music. So stand out in sports, stand out as a soundtrack to a video game, or like we just saw on the Grammys recently, a TikTok. That's crazy. That's so cool that we should live this long to see. One way or another, the music industry evolve. And that's what it's really about. And music industry always has, way faster than TV. But that's the power of audio. That's the power of audio. Audio is nimble. Audio will come back. TV had a moment. Music, podcast, radio, it's all coming back to audio, in my opinion.
I watched a documentary a couple weeks ago on Harry Nilsson, and I was a big fan of his back in the 70s because that was my era, my generation. And I didn't realize that he basically refused to perform live in concert. He wouldn't do live shows. He wouldn't go out and do tours, but he kept creating hit after hit after hit. And it was to the point where the audience couldn't get enough of Harry Nilsson. Now, eventually, if you watch the documentary, you find out he kind of implodes on himself in later years. But to me, that was really the beginning of someone who owned content and knew how to get it out there because it's what the audience wanted. They wanted to listen to it. Of course, he had radio helping to promote it, which is different than what we have now. But, this is the 1970s. But here's a guy who did not have to do a single live concert. Now, he would do television specials. And in fact, on the documentary, they talk about he did a television special and there's no one in the audience. He just did a show in a studio, and that's what it was.
Without you, literally.
Yeah.
That's funny.
But he was successful.
Yeah.
Do you think that the artist still needs to, and this isn't a loaded question, I'm just asking out of curiosity, do you think that the artist still needs to get out and perform live in front of an audience? And I'm not talking Coachella. It could be the coffee house. It could be a small intimate theater. It could be an outdoor festival. Or can they be successful enough just getting music on various social media platforms?
Oh, that's an interesting question. So there's almost like a separation of the utility of music versus the utility of a celebrity. Almost in this question is kind of like what I feel. So I think, if Netflix proves that we can watch TV shows and not know what TV networks they come from, and not even ask and not even wonder, was this on TV before this hit Netflix, or we just assume, in the speed of where social media is going, where the blips are smaller and smaller and smaller, the hooks are catchier, and the hooks are, on TV, on my, on every single screen. I can absolutely see a detachment from music and musician. And I can absolutely see how success, especially in this new market of ownership, especially, by the way, so you were talking about Harry, a single artist. There's a lot of artists these days that are groups. So I just want to point out, and I'm sure everyone knows this, but like when you're in a group, you're splitting your paycheck 4, 5. If Lou Pearlman's in your group, you got to give him 2 extra spots also. Is how it used to go. So like like when NSYNC would perform, there's 5 of them. He included himself as the 6th member. Those 5 guys got that night divided by 6. Whatever it was divided by 6 is what they walked away from. So ownership over music, and by ownership, I mean ownership of the actual IP, the intellectual property, and also the process. The more hands-on you are, the more you can do to keep as little hands on your music as possible, or to have a group of people that you work with. The other part to your question is the celebrity piece. I feel like Kelly Rowland might be a good example as an artist who actually, I think both Kelly Rowland, I think both those Destiny women do pretty well. I mean, obviously we know Beyonce, but I think there's something special about what they do in music, in gospel and in house, that tends to be separated from their mainstream celebrity, but also they're able to have 2 coexist at the same time, where like one lives in gospel and then one lives in house, and then sometimes they can host or judge be a judge on Greatest Talent or one of those sort of shows. Yeah, that's because platforms are different, and as more audio platforms emerge. So here's something interesting. Social media is very, very video, right? TV is obviously very video. These 2 platforms, or media forms, I should say, rocked how music was distributed. I'm curious about the clubhouses, the social audio streaming, the stuff that Amazon AMP is doing right now, which is taken licensed music from the Amazon library and allowing users to broadcast it, and it's counting towards proper, music accreditation, and the writers and the publishers and everyone is being paid accordingly. I'm curious how these streaming platforms, these audio platforms, will continue to have an impact in the audio place, in the audio sphere.
Yeah, I think, in fact, when we talk about ownership, platforms like Spotify, YouTube to a certain extent, and the list goes on, but they're all having to really step up their game, because I think someone else is going to come along eventually and create a platform that's going to not only be user friendly, but it's going to be friendly to the artists.
Artist friendly. Yeah.
It's going to be that creative.
It's going to be the artists.
Yeah.
Jay-Z. That's like what Tidal, is to many artists. Why some of them some of the artists that are on Tidal won't even think of being on other platforms.
On the show with us today, Vinnie Podestivo.
Hi, my name is Niklas Molinder. I'm the founder of Session and Music Rights Awareness Foundation. Please check out my podcast on the business side of music. It's available out now.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Hey, I'd like you to check out my buddy John Adams' company, Money Concepts. As a musician, you have a dream. That vision is what success looks like for you. Though it's not only about the money, money is absolutely part of it. Whether you've been extremely successful or you're just striving to maintain a regular cash flow, you do need a plan. Money Concepts can help you develop a customized plan to achieve the financial stability and the success you want. For over 40 years, Money Concepts has been providing holistic financial planning services to the individuals, families, and business owners. As an independent firm, Money Concepts and their associates are committed to always represent the best interest of their client. It's really about a committed, benevolent interest in them personally. This independence, coupled with that committed, benevolent interest, means that they represent you, the client, not a product supplier. It's not about selling products. It's about helping you achieve success. To learn how this can benefit you, contact my buddy, John Adams, with Money Concepts at 737-867-9309. That's 737-867-9309. You can also email John at jadams@moneyconcepts.com.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Let's talk about what you're doing now. What's in your wheelhouse? Where are you going? What are you doing these days?
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah. So I created a podcast. It's called I Have a Podcast. I only released like 18 episodes. I went back and talked to the closest people that I've worked with in my career, whose careers I've changed and who've changed my career as well. So Mandy Moore, Christina Milian, Jamie Sigler, Danielle Fishel, Topanga, from Boy Meets World, I went back and chatted with them about their creative processes. About 18 episodes in, I felt like I could be more impactful. So I took I Have a Podcast, went to Bespoke TV, and was able to turn it into a TV show. So now I have a TV show called I Have a Podcast on TV, which is distributed on DirecTV, Cox, Comcast, and about a dozen of those like AVOD networks you hear about via Bespoke TV. And I still felt like I'm not doing enough to get the word out there to truly help people. It feels like I'm building a stage for me. Look at me, look at it. It just wasn't enough of a give back. So I registered I Have a Podcast, and then I turned it into ihaveapodcast.com, a discovery platform for podcasters, for independent podcasters. So what I'll do is I'll find independent podcasters, and I'm just going to gas them, blow them up. I'm going to write great articles about them. I'm going to make sure that all the media people, the media eyeballs that I've been working with for years are seeing it. And I also know how to strategically leverage, digital content to help you get discovered. So my ecosystem is built to help you get discovered. And I'm really excited about that. On VPE.tv, my website, I've launched something called the Creator Accelerator, which is like, it's a URL library. It's all the tactics, all the tricks that I use, every software as a service, every kind of thing that you can pay for. I'm letting you know what I've used because I tend to give that information out a lot anyway. So I just made it all organized. And then the last thing I did is I launched an awards database because I want to help people learn what awards they qualify for. They don't know that there are music awards, marketing awards, video awards, non-television video awards, marketing stacking awards. I like helping people win awards, not because of the vanity metric of winning awards. Most awards are won in group settings anyway, so I like that part of it. But I want you to be an award-winning whatever, because people look for that. We start at the top when we don't know who or what we're looking for. And I'm really good at helping people who win awards get them on their IMDb account, because IMDb is owned by Amazon, and Amazon talks to Google. So if you want to win an award and put it on your resume on LinkedIn so you can show people who are considering you that you won an award, that's one strategy. What I'm helping people do is win awards, and then those awards are what's helping those people get discovered. And that's just so powerful that I'm building this community of people that I hope stick around with me for another 20 years, because it's been a fun 25 years so far. So that's the goal. Keep us all in this. Every job is creative now. So I literally work in every industry, because everything from airplanes to science, every class that I never got along, every class that I didn't like in school, I now qualify because I was creative and I was so different. I now get to work with every single from woodworking to skincare. It's the coolest gig in the world. And I just want to help people be creative.
I heard a line a week or so ago that I thought really struck home, and that is creative is business and business is creative. Oh, yes. And once we start tying those two together, you can become successful.
Oh, yeah. So I like helping creatives find success in business, and I like helping business-minded people find success, in creativity. My first thing I would say is they tend to be measured the same, which is unfortunate. If you have creativity and then you use a lot of creativity, what do you get? More creativity. If you have a lot of business and you spend a lot of money, what do you have? Not a lot of money afterwards, unless you sell, but I'm not talking about the full cycle. I'm talking about the short cycle so for us to have business wins in our creative success, and for us to have successful wins in our business ventures, it's difficult to line that up. It's very nonlinear. It takes 50 to 100, podcasts out there for the right one to hit the right person. And then all of a sudden you can say, I finally got a phone call from somebody who heard my podcast. And hey, you know what? Maybe now, in a very nonlinear way, because it's 2 years later, I'll say I made my money back, because they were able to not only just meet me, but I had 50 episodes for them to really believe that I'm not just saying this at Skin Deep. I'm really, truly there. It's powerful stuff.
Yeah, I agree. A few months ago, we got an email from someone that I had followed since I was in high school, back to the days of the bands that I listened to, Blood, Sweat, and Tears. And and it was from Al Kooper. And Al Kooper is such a legend in the music industry. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he's listening to our show. This is so awesome. And he just dropped an email. He made a comment about, we had an episode about artist management, and he kind of went off on, what he thought about artist management in response to that. But I love that we actually have that interaction and connection. And it's someone that I looked up to when, like I said, when I was in high school, that, here's a legend in the music industry it's actually responding to us. And so
it's so cool.
You're hitting a note, and that's the cool part.
I had Doug Herzog, who's a bigwig at MTV, pop into a LinkedIn audio event that I was doing. And I literally got starstruck. I was like, I'm like in the presence of I'm like, I just know what it takes I know what it took or a little bit of what it took to get that network up and running. So when you meet these people who and he's like the best, when you meet these people and they're the original, the OGs, I hate to say it, but like they're still around. TV, it feels like TV is, been around for a while. MTV got, 81 is when MTV was born. Cable, not soon before that. And,
right.
And internet, not soon after. So those are the people, though, like to your point about Al Kooper, there's so much respect for the OGs who had vision and then also did it their way.
Yes.
And also I bet this is why maybe Elvis can come out with a song in 2002 and people come out with songs later. It's like we should be doing what they did. We should be recording what we want to record and creating what we feel called to create. And not everything has to get published right away. Most of what we do could be evergreen. It could be evergreen. And then some of it could be motivationally charged based on like what the words that need to enter the lexicon now. And I think social media, digital media, TV, radio, and the different versions, terrestrial and satellite, there's a way for all of those music to coexist and stand out. And I'll say this, if you're an artist looking to stand out, if you're an artist looking for a break, look, do the traditional things. I'm a big fan of 80-20. So like do the traditional 80% on your YouTube, do your covers that people might, the way that executives are trained to find you, do the things where they're looking, but do them your way. And then that other 20%, get a baseball podcast and just start every single episode with an original version, just find ways to stand out that are non-traditional that will be rewarding. Think of it as an Easter egg, we just coming out of the holiday season. Think of it as an Easter egg. You're creating these beautiful things for yourself. Make it for you or for the cause or for the energy. If we're lucky enough that you want to share it with us, hide it, make us work for it because we want to find it. We get more reward when we find things than when it's handed to us. And I think that's what some artists, Beyonce does that beautifully, talk about lead a horse to water, right? Like she's like, I can tell you when I'm coming out with my album and you can sit there and anticipate it or just get used to Beyonce doing what she does. And when I drop something and I tell you it's going to be gone in 24 hours,
yeah,
they got enough money now, then they could go away in 20. Maybe in the early days, it wasn't gone in 24 hours as quickly, but there certainly is enough cooperation, respect, and money that these artists have that can change the way that's done. That's cool.
Vinnie, thank you so much for being on the show. This was awesome. This was over the top. Thank you.
Oh, I appreciate you. Look, we got to stay in this together. And video killed the radio star, so radio didn't get a bad rap. I got you. We got to save this.
The Business Side of Music is the creation of Tom Sabella and Tracy Snow and is produced by Bob Bender. The Business Side of Music is recorded at Music Dog Studios in Nashville, Tennessee. Production sound design by Keith Stark. Voiceover and promo by Lisa Busan.